Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hindu Explainer series. I am Kushag Rakul and very warm greetings from Law Prep Tutorial. I hope all of you are doing safe and all your family members are equally safe. And I hope that all the viewers who are 18 above will register themselves at the CoWIN platform. See, if the app has crashed or if you were using the app and the app registration wasn't working, I suggest that you use the website to do the registration. Alright, so we'll talk about more about the registration a little later. But before I do that, so yesterday I had put up a question about what article can the Supreme Court use under the Constitution to take suo motu transfer of High Court cases to itself. It is Article 139A that helps or gives the Supreme Court the power to do precisely that. Alright, so that is the answer. Now I always see this is the time when even if you get an answer incorrect, it is completely alright. But make sure that whenever I put in such question, you take the time and the effort to look up these answers and look up these questions, because it's part of making you curious about things that are interrelated to what is happening in the country. Things like these can be asked for the examination. Alright. Then moving on, there is another update from CLAT that you can now, for those who have not yet registered for the examination, can do it now until May 15. The deadline, which was 30th April, has now been extended. Alright, so make sure that you are, for those who had not completed their registrations, are able to do that now. Then moving on, so I'll take up certain doubts. Now, yesterday we discussed one of the major conflicts in Middle East and the conflict in Yemen. So I hope it, and I am glad that it clarified long pending doubts of a lot of you. But there were certain other doubts that you all had, so I'll be taking them up. So first doubt that students had was related to India asking US to give up its AstraZeneca vaccine dose, something that President Joe Biden has reiterated once again that he will send them. Now, in that regard, what becomes important to be noted down is, see, there are concerns about the AstraZeneca vaccine in the sense that blood clots have been reported in younger people, but the AstraZeneca vaccine is the modified format of it is the Covishield vaccine that we have been administering to Indians since January 16 anyway. So Indian government and Indian health authorities believe that there is no direct linkage between the AstraZeneca vaccine and blood clotting. So it is, as per the government, safe. So I am not going to raise any alarms. We had 2 FAQs in the Hindu newspaper also about it in April and March. So see, health related editorials and articles which are about information for in general for COVID-19 is something that I highlight in general, not from examination perspective, but also for your general understanding, so that you can help those around you. It is not just the government, but it is also us who are educated, and us need to be aware about the COVID-19 pandemic. So therefore such information is important nevertheless. Alright. Then moving on, another doubt that students had was, why has Syria become a front where the proxy war is happening between Israel, between Iran, between Saudi Arabia? Now see, it can always happen, and therefore it is important. The foreign policy of India that was non-alignment during Jawaharlal Nehru itself, that was the peak of Cold War, where every country was aligning either this way or that way. The problem with this was that we could get into a proxy war between countries, and therefore India always chose to have a autonomous strategic autonomy. So that non-alignment has now converted itself as a phrase that our external affairs minister keeps using nowadays, is strategic autonomy. So non-alignment to strategic autonomy, and it is therefore we need to retain that. When you rely too much on any one country, as the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad did on Iran, therefore then you become, the actions that you can take against such a party becomes limited and you become indebted to them, and that is exactly what is happening in Syria. Now, why he needed assistance? Basically, he wanted to tide over the rebellion and to curb protests that were happening because he had used chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction against his own people during the Syrian conflict. So therefore, it becomes important. Now, a follow-up question into that was, what is the impact of all this on India? Now see, India has independent ties to all three major powers in the Middle East, such as Israel. A lot of our missiles and defense equipments come from Israel. A lot of our internal security training and counterinsurgency preparation is assisted by Mossad, which is the security agency of Israel. So that regard, cyber surveillance and cyber security is also something for which we rely heavily on Israel because it is a country pioneering in that. Of late, for farming purposes also, to maximize our farming output, we have once again more heavily relied on Israel. So we have interest there. We have interest in Iran also. Why? Because India is building the Chabahar port, which is like the gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asian countries, which are important for India. For trade purposes, for nuclear fuel that we need to import for manufacturing and producing electric energy through nuclear fuel, which is important, our stakes in Afghanistan and Iran. So all of that is tied to that. Thirdly, on Saudi Arabia also. Saudi Arabia is one of the major exporter of oil to India, and thus our energy needs are reliant on that. So we are independently in a different way aligned to all these three countries, and therefore any war or any conflict in Middle East is problematic for India. Therefore, sustainable peace in Middle East is the best interest or the best case scenario for India. Then another doubt that students also had were related to two terms, two statements. Alright, so I'm going to talk about them. The first statement that students have asked is that monopolies over pharmaceutical drugs be altogether removed with protections offered only over claims to processes. So, and how is Patent Act different from TRIPS agreement? Now, TRIPS agreement is an international agreement. Patents Act is an Indian act. All right, it's an Indian domestic legislation. So therefore, there is no direct comparison. Both of them do relate to protection of intellectual property rights. Now, a follow-up question to that becomes, can a patent in India be valid in another country? Definitely yes. Patents are something that is granted universally. So you may have a specific patent in India and you can apply for the same patent in different other jurisdictions. It is precisely the TRIPS agreement that helps you do that. See, I as a company applied for patent in India on something unique. You will not be granted patent in India if there is a patent that exists in another country of the same thing by another person. Alright, so that is how intellectual property rights are protected throughout the world. Alright, now what does this phrase mean? That monopolies over pharmaceutical drugs, COVID vaccines, different equipments, right? So different essential life-saving drugs. So that needs to be protected. Why? Because they are essential for everyone. And if there is a monopoly of any one company over them, or it is protected, or in the sense that it is given to any one company only, they can profit from it, super profits, or the limit of overall production in general is limited, right? So therefore it becomes important for us to ensure that these monopolies are restricted. How can they be restricted? The suggestion is that these protections be removed and only claims over process is granted. Now what? So you can either be granted a patent over a product or the process through which you get to arrive at that product. All right. So therefore, now for example, let's say you make Vaseline or you make a moisturizer. So now I may claim that, see, my product is Vaseline is unique. Now moisturizer in general, if for example I get a patent over moisturizer, no one else will be able to manufacture or produce moisturizers. But if I say that, see, the process through which I arrived at this is protected and that product or process is named as Vaseline. So you are only being protected on the process and not the entire product. It is this what is being proposed, that see, people can produce COVID vaccines in general. That see, if there is a adenovirus vaccine, if there is a mRNA vaccine, different pharmaceutical companies should be permitted to make these. They can only be protected through the process with which they get to or arrive at it. All right. So until 2005, India could do process patents only, but now we have moved to a regime of product patent. All right. So that is the difference, process patents and product patents. All right. Then another doubt that students also had was, countries use foreign currency reserves to keep a fixed rate value, maintain competitively priced exports, remain liquid in case of crisis, and provide confidence for investors. How does foreign currency reserves help maintain fixed rate value? So now this means, so the statement is countries use foreign currency reserves to keep a fixed rate value. Now what is this talking about? This is talking about comparison between, let's say, Indian rupee vis-a-vis US dollar. So US dollar right now is trading at 67 rupees. $1 is equal to 67 rupees. Now you can compare it in the sense that, how do you determine that this is the case? Or let's say the demand for US dollar rises in the market and demand for Indian rupee falls, but you still want to maintain the price of US dollar vis-a-vis Indian rupee as this. So therefore you need your foreign reserves for it. These reserves help you tide over these fluctuations that keep happening in the market. What are fluctuations? So for example, during Diwali or the festive time period from October to December, a lot of jewelry or precious metals become higher in demand. So there is a spike in this, right? But if, for example, you already have a lot of imported gold in the country, imported precious metals, the spike in the market will not be that high. So foreign reserves act as a cushion against certain spikes. Then what is remain liquid in case of crisis? Remain liquid. Liquidity is that you have surplus cash with yourself. All right. So that helps you in the sense that, let's say right now the lockdown is happening at different states. Let's say your salary or your parent's salary has not been credited to the account. Now that is a crisis. You may need essential goods, but if you have certain surplus, if you have maintained some amount of saving, then you can tide over that time period. And that is precisely what remain liquid in case of crisis means. So on that note, I think that's all for the doubts. In case I've missed something, put it in the comment section once again today and I'll address it tomorrow. Then moving on to the newspaper analysis today. So first things first, about CoWIN portal is the method through which you can register yourselves, everyone above the age of 18. However, right now, even if you are able to register, you will not be granted a slot or a time when you can get the vaccine shot, which is precisely something that different state governments had been saying, that see, there is no vaccine to even give vaccination to people above age of 45. There is no space for us to provide it to people above the age of 18. And that has now been confirmed, that throughout the country only, different state, no state government till now has actually been able to get the vaccines to administer it to people above the age of 18. Now this is something that over time, as state governments confirm it, whether they have vaccines enough to do it to people, you will be getting these slots for getting the shot of COVID vaccines. But that should not defer the moment where you register yourself. You should register on the portal at the earliest. Then on the left hand side, during counting, it has become mandatory that agents and people, candidates, if they want to come to the center, they have to have negative COVID reports. This is to confirm that post polling there is no further spike. This is something that has come up after different high courts have reprimanded Election Commission for its handling of elections during this time period of COVID-19. Then on the left hand side, journalist Siddique Kappan, who has been arrested ever since the Hathras gang rape surfaced in Uttar Pradesh. It was claimed that see, he was part of UAP under which he is under arrest. His health has continuously deteriorated in Uttar Pradesh jail, and now he has been transferred to Delhi hospital for proper medical treatment. This also shows that the lack of confidence in healthcare facilities in Uttar Pradesh, which is something that is being flagged over and over again during the past 2 months. Then the central government has finally notified the act that gives more power to the Delhi Lieutenant Governor. Now the government in Delhi is not the elected Chief Minister and his Council of Ministers, but the nominated Lieutenant Governor. This has finally come into effect. It comes into effect from April 27. So yesterday we were discussing how the Delhi High Court was reprimanding the Delhi government, but now the Delhi government is basically the Lieutenant Governor and basically the central government itself. So Delhi as a union territory now becomes less democratic in the sense that central government through a nominated individual will actually run the Delhi government. The amendments that are relevant to it, something we have done 2 in-depth analysis about. So I hope you make sure that you revise this once again. Plus Serum Institute's Adar Punawala tweeted yesterday that it is a philanthropic gesture under which he has reduced the price of Covishield vaccine from 400 to 300. This does not still confirm in the sense that what is the actual price of the vaccine. It is confirmed as per his statements, his company was already making profits out of 150 rupees per dosage, which shows that basically what he has done is reduced his own profits without actually clarifying how much profit his company is still making. This is still 2 times higher than the price at which the company was supplying it to the central government. Then moving on, horrific images different times from the country about the number of dead that are reporting. India yesterday once again reported record number of deaths, and on the other side a earthquake with the Richter scale a magnitude of 6.4 struck Assam yesterday at 7.5 7:51 AM. The epicenter of it is being Assam, and it had overall impact up till Bangladesh, Bihar, West Bengal and different adjoining northeastern states. The number of dead have been limited to only 2 and several injured, but damage to property has been reported. Then on the national news, more grim. People are hoarding different medical essentials and medicines and oxygen cylinders, something which the High Court appealed citizens not to do, as this denies others who need it. Then moving on the editorial front. So the main editorial today talks about 2-3 things. Now the main editorial in general doesn't become important, but it has 2-3 aspects related to COVID that we need to discuss. So gasping for air, gasping for answers. So it talks about 2 things. First, asphyxia, which is the shortage of breath. A lot of people who have passed away due to COVID-19 and shortage of oxygen as the primary reason. The disease related to that is asphyxia, and part of it is also trauma. It has confirmed that even if you may not have long-term health impact of COVID-19 once you have recovered, it has now been confirmed that majority of the population will still suffer from PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. And as the country is facing shortage of oxygen, the family members in general also of those who suffer from COVID-19 will also be suffering from this. This shows that the graph of PTSD cases or Indians in general would be a traumatized country once the second wave or the COVID-19 pandemic is over. That the trauma that comes with such a large scale health crisis will take a long time and a long-term health impact on its population. Something that we need to start preparing for. That not just for tiding over the current crisis, we need to prepare for this crisis that is also coming in. In that sense, the end of the editorial discusses that we need specific answers and accountability. Democracy is also holding those in charge accountable. That why were we not prepared for all of this when the Sero surveys predicted that 80% of India's population was susceptible to COVID-19? Why were not enough steps taken? And who should be accountable? Institutions and individuals, and some amount of accountability and action should be taken against those who did not prepare enough, who were in charge of preparing but did not do anything about it. Then on the left hand side, salutary steps. This is talking about the Election Commission step to further curb spread of COVID-19 post the polling date. However, in that regard, another suggestion that the editorial discusses is about how elections post COVID-19 should not be at such a prolonged phase, such as West Bengal. Elections have happened over 2 months time period when gathering should be limited to minimal. United States moved most of its people to and asked its population to use remote voting. Rather than exploring such options, our election commission prolonged the elections. That is being criticized, something that needs to be considered, that logistics and everything can be worked out so that there is no further risk of livelihood and life because of elections. Then the second one, shortage and wastage. This talks about vaccine wastage and generally flags Tamil Nadu as the state where there is high vaccine wastage, something that should be investigated into. Then the other editorial, temples are not fiefdoms of the state. This is an editorial that is in response to one we discussed on April 22nd. That this was about how the Indian state still has the power to regulate and control the temples. This one challenges that, see, this is something that should not happen. Temples and religious places should be democratized in the sense that people of the community should hold them, and this is something that is under their fundamental rights. Now, why am I not flagging or highlighting this editorial is for two reasons. The cases on which this editorial relies on are basically prior to 1955, in the sense that the jurisprudence of the court has changed a lot. And secondly, the justifications that are granted in this editorial are also based on that once the temples are actually given to the community, it will give more representation but not be a fiefdom of more oppression of those who are oppressed by the religion in general. That, see, when there is representation will be granted to all the people, including women and Dalit. The reality of this is not lost on the population. How these cases in general are not something that are directly related to what the editorial talked about. Nevertheless, this is all related to Article 25 and 26 of the fundamental rights of the Constitution. So that is only thing that needs to be noted down. In general, this is something that is a policy level now, as this is criticizing that, see, no, this is something that should be done, no, this is something that will happen, this will be better. What will be better, what will not, can only be seen. We know that places which are private properties in general, for example, the TDP, which is the board that undertakes the Sabrimala temple, has since the 20th century only come up with a ritual where menstruating women should not be permitted. Historically, that has not been the case. So, and recent Supreme Court judgments have called upon these practices, that these are all measures to reinforce patriarchal limitations on different strata of the society. So therefore, I'm not discussing more about it. Then on the op-ed page, the left hand side up talks about antimicrobial resistance. What is antimicrobial resistance in general? We have discussed this over past 6 months. This is something that has been talked about. Let's say you get a viral infection. You were given a dosage for antiviral for 7 days. You only took for 5 days. You realize that, see, I am now okay. I don't need to take the next 2 days. Now what has happened is, in general, the bacteria, and in case you have any other disease also, there is now resistance in your body to the virus, that the medicine may become ineffective in the long term because of these antimicrobial resistance that remains in the body. Developed countries are preparing for it. This is something that the WHO has also highlighted, that AMR is a slow tsunami that threatens to undo a century of medical progress. That, see, if the medicines that we now have become ineffective to the microbes that affect us or affect our health, if that happens, then we will need new medicines. That is something that developed countries are doing. The editorial calls for India to do the same. Then on the right hand side, misinformed and misleading. This is a criticism of the health policy suggestions that the health ministry has put out for treatment of COVID-19, and how different medicines that have worked outside are not listed in it, and the ones that have not worked or there is no evidence for it of not working are listed. Now this is something in medical expertise and thus not relevant from our perspective. Then on the left hand side, the third op-ed talks about making social welfare universal, in the sense that, see, why different schemes of social security. India is a welfare state. There are different social security schemes that work, such as Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, PM Kisan, we have Manrega. So these are different schemes. Now what this calls upon, this editorial, that see, all social welfare schemes should become universal and clubbed. Rather than having multiple schemes, we should have one social welfare scheme bracket under which different population are listed. Now how feasible it is for a population of such a large size is something that can be only for policy discussion, thus not relevant for us. Then the data point talks about how the death percentage on India is on the rise, something that is evident. We reported 3,700 deaths yesterday, and something, the overall data from different states is also being stated that this is being repressed. So moving on the other national news, so Covaxin shields from the double mutant, which is B1617, which is the Indian variant of the coronavirus, or the double mutation of the coronavirus. Reports have now been published in different journals such as Bio, RXIV and other medical journals, plus by ICMR, that see, Covaxin is proven to be effective against the variant. Alright, then moving on, apart from this, on the other national news, nothing of real note for us. Over 3,000 die for the second straight day, approximately 3,535 fatalities. This can be very high in general also, approximately 1,000 more, because the crematoriums are full, but those deaths are not being reported. Especially also in Uttar Pradesh, the testing is so low, a lot of people are dying, but the post death COVID testing is not being happening in Uttar Pradesh, something that has been flagged by the central government and is part of their guideline. Apart from this, this page also talks about other health, that is other foreign aid and help that is pouring into India, which is WHO, Singapore, different state governments, different states also sending in oxygen concentrators, oxygen production plants, and in general, Singapore has even sent 2 aircrafts to supply medicines and oxygen from one place to another in the country. So they have lent their 2 aircrafts to India to do that. So this is that, see, India is now in a situation of international concern, and thus health is pouring in from all places. This entire page is about the COVID situation in the country and how it is risky. And then to the international news. So on the international news, nothing of real note for us primarily to be discussed. However, one of them is that India, Australia and Japan have now launched a supply chain resilience initiative, which is being moved. So majority of the world's supply chains move around China. But because of COVID-19, it was realized that global supply chains need to become resilient. What does this resilience mean? This resilience means that you need to have multiple alternatives available, substitutes available, so that the overall product is not affected. Let's say, for example, right now in India, we are facing shortage of essential medicines. Now, United States controls that global supply chain, that input goods for vaccine and essential medicines need to be relied on US government. Now, if the US government stops them, then the production of them stops across the globe. So to make it resilient, you need to have alternatives available. That, see, if in case US stops, there is another country that can do it. That is what this is about. The focus primarily of India, Australia and Japan is to make supply chains of their economies resilient vis-a-vis China. This is also being part of the geopolitical conflict that is now brewing between China vis-a-vis the liberal democracies of the world. Then on the left hand side, Joe Biden reiterated that he will send India vaccines. How much of them, when, that is not been confirmed. He also stated that other vaccine and goods that are needed for India will be provided. Then moving on, the tensions of now Russia has retaliated to the steps that European countries have taken against it. This is part of geopolitical maneuver of Russia and Europe. Apart from that, China pushes for defense ties with Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. Now the statement is powers from outside the region setting up military alliances in South Asia. This is in direct relation to India getting into a military alliance with US, Japan and Australia, which is being touted as outsiders, and also this is part of China's pearl of strings foreign economic policy of isolating India and South Asia in general. Apart from that, there is on the person in news, Michael Collins, one of the 3 astronauts who were part of the Apollo 11 mission last year, which celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, has passed away yesterday at the age of 90. So Apollo 11 was the first human aircraft to land on the surface of moon. 2 astronauts within it were so it was a crew of 3. Michael Collins was the one who did not step on the moon. Now in the comment section, I want you all to put in the date of Apollo 11 mission and the 2 other astronauts who landed on the moon, the first 2 men to land on the moon. Also, a follow-up question for this is, so Apollo was the mission under which men were sent to the moon. What is the NASA mission under which NASA plans to send the first women to the surface of moon? It is also related to Greek god only, Greek mythology. So I want the name of the other mission and the 2 astronauts who landed on the moon in the comment section. Let's see how much you guys know in general about space technology or do the research to find it out. On the sporting and economic news, nothing of real note for us. The overall stress is that India's recovery may be dampened because of this. So on this note, I'll conclude for the day. In today's newspaper, you need to note down about the new amendment that has taken place to the Delhi government in the Union Territory. How now the government of Delhi is less powerful in the sense that the lieutenant governor is the final adjudicating authority there. Apart from that, in the newspaper, more about medicines related to COVID-19 medical treatment. PTSD has been confirmed as part of something that people will suffer even if they recover from COVID-19. Apart from that, on the newspaper side, less about factual information and more about in general related to policy making, but supply chain resilience between India, Australia, Japan and passing away of Michael Collins becomes important. On that note, take care. I'll see you all tomorrow.